Hi, and welcome to the Succession Planning Survival Guide, where Ted and I plan to share the practical stories that will help equip you with the skills to survive the succession of your business. My name is Andrew Brill, and I'm an associate here with Beanstalk Collaborative Community Wealth. At Beanstalk, our mission is to maintain and grow community wealth by partnering with manufacturing owners to preserve their legacies and keep their businesses, jobs, and economic benefits in their local communities. More simply put, we buy, build, and hold U.S. manufacturing companies with the plan to keep them in their communities forever. I'm excited to introduce our presenter, Ted Stolberg, one of our founding partners here at Beanstalk.
Great.
Ted.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Why don't we flip to the next one?
Yeah.
So as Andrew said, we're going to talk about this little survival guide. And, the succession planning is, it can be tricky. You're talking about perhaps selling your business, passing it on to your children, ESOPs, co-ops. So we're going to try to simplify it and give a few examples that hopefully you'll find helpful. So there's two kinds of succession planning. There's internal and external. So we've broken it up into two ways. So the first one's internal, and that's basically where you're essentially going to sell the business either through an ESOP or a co-op, and I kind of throw those in the same bucket, or you're going to pass it down to your children or other relatives. And those are very different. So we want to talk a little bit about those. You'll notice we have this little clever fireplace triangle with the ESOP in it. Okay, let's flip to the next one. So ESOPs, the idea of ESOPs, employee stock ownership, is really terrific. I mean, the idea is you're going to pass it on to your employees, you're loyal to your employees, they've been a big part of making the business successful, you want to support them, and so, you're on the side of the angels. Having said that, there are some issues we got to talk about. And that is sometimes this feel good is not so good. A couple of cautionary warnings. One, unless you're really 100 million in revenue, it doesn't make sense. They're too expensive. They're complicated. There's lots of lawyers. Yes, people will talk to you about a tax benefit, and that's true. But the bottom line is when you really cut through it, you're selling the business to your employees. You're financing it. There's going to be a trustee involved. You're probably going to be on the trust. You're probably going to have some legal liability. And so, my advice to you is if you're thinking about an ESOP, sit with the best ESOP lawyer you have and say, look, when am I going to get my money? And two, how do I know my employees are going to make this work? And you're going to get a 3-hour dissertation and the top of your head's going to blow off because it's so complicated. So let's go to the next.
Those are some good points, Ted. Why is an ESOP more expensive than a traditional? Where are those expenses for an ESOP coming from?
Well, you got to get, it's the whole structure is complicated because you're selling to the employees. There's a trust involved. There's a trustee. There's rights and obligations. There's taxes. And then there's the issue, Andrew, of, well, who's going to finance this? I mean, the employees don't have capital to buy this. Mm-hmm. And so there's a whole, in effect, you're taking, in effect, you're loaning money to the trust, and that's going to get paid out by the business, in effect. So it's complicated. And as I said, you don't want to be this guy because, you don't know how long it's going to take to get your money back. It could take a very long time. And I want to give an example of one. If you could switch, well, yeah, no, here we go. So you need Superman to run this thing. I mean, it's always, in our world, it's always about management. And if you're selling it to the employees, well, who's running it? You're gone, or you're staying perhaps for a transition, but who actually is in charge? And the other thing we found is sometimes it's hard to find really good management when the company is owned by the employees or it's a co-op, in which case, actually the employees can get together, change the board, and fire the manager. So you got to really think that through about who is going to run the company. Yeah, if you don't have the right person running this company, I promise you it will not work. I mean, it's like every other thing: business, process, people, systems. Got to compete in the marketplace. It's going to be a dog. It's not going to work. So I wanted to give you an example. This is a really great company here in Colorado, New Belgium Brewing. Many of you may know it. It's a brewing company started by Kim Jordan and her husband, and they grew this thing to $300 million. And in the course of that, they very much cared for their employees. Absolutely loved their employees, wanted to transition to their employees. And this is a picture of Kim, who started. I really liked her. She's fabulous. And they had a goal. Read this. There are a few times in your life where you get to make choices that will impact generational impacts. They wanted to see this stay in its community forever. And they did a smart thing. First of all, they were large, 200 million, they were making 20 to 30 million. So it fit the size criteria. They could go through the trappings and the legal part of it because, they could afford it. It was large. And also she was in charge for a while. And then ultimately, I think it was in 2019, it got transferred in total 100% to the employees. So her goal, she's on the side of the angels, as I said, she wants multi-generational impacts. Okay, well, let's switch to the next slide. Well, what happened was 1 year after it got transferred to the employees, it got sold. The employees sold it to a Japanese company called Kirin. And, I'm not saying that's awful. I mean, that generation of employees made some money, which is great, but I'm not sure that was the intent of Kim and her husband, who started this thing from nothing. So just a cautionary tale there.
It is interesting to see employees be turned into capitalists.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it happens. So let's talk about your children now. So the other way, remember, we're talking about internal succession. So now we're going to talk about, and generally, it could be cousins or whatever, but I'm simplifying this. We're talking about generally going to your children. And this is also kind of tricky. The first thing is, again, as we said before, it's all about management. You have to have an honest assessment of your children. Can they run this thing? Can they honestly, have they been there? Are they capable? Are they trained? Have they been around enough to really, really make it work? And this is a hard one. I have kids. I don't think I honestly can evaluate my children in a rational way. I love my kids. Not sure I could do that. So it's very, very hard. And you have to figure out, who's your kid. There's one kind of kid, and there's another kind of kid. So you really have to kind of sort it out and make sure you don't make a mistake here, because you're turning the lives of your employees over to this new manager. This is something we've seen a number of times. We call it the two-headed monster. And what it is you got two people in charge. And so there's no one's wearing the crown. No one can actually make decisions. And siblings, there's a lot of emotional issues with siblings. We got to be honest about that. So then you see this little guy, the samurai warrior fighting the two-headed monster. Well, guess who they are? They are the three cousins that are sitting on the board, not involved in the business, right? But yet now they're sniping at the two son and daughter running the business, who are getting compensation and maybe have an equity ownership. And so it can be an absolute mess. So what I'm saying is, be honest, make sure that one of your children is capable of giving them the proper authority and responsibility, and make sure the board is correct, because you can't be sniping at them. And in fact, we work with a firm called Pass It On in Colorado Springs, and they're terrific. And one of the things in some situations we recommend is, come into a conference room, bring everybody in, the founder, the wives, the cousins, the sons, the daughters, and have a 4-hour session with them, and then let them help you evaluate what do you got, and how can this actually work to pass this on appropriately. So now we're switching. We're going to talk about external. So we talked about internal, ESOPs, co-ops, passing it on to your children. Now let's talk about external. So we think of that as a couple, two different categories. There are more, but we're just, corporate buyers, private equity buyers. Corporate buyers, they have synergies. They're big operations, likely to pay you the highest price. We're going to talk about what that can mean in terms of your employees and whether they're going to consolidate plants and how they're going to run it. But they can pay a high price for your business if that's your goal. And that's a big thing. You got to figure out, what is your goal? And then there's private equity buyers. And I was a private equity buyer for years. And so I'm the reformed smoker. So I have some biases about private equity buyers, and you'll probably see my biases appropriately. So let's go to the corporate guys. If you want to sell to a corporate buyer, we've done that a lot. We think there are three simple things that can make it work and be successful. And the three things are that you are going to transition with the business, and you've had previous corporate experience, meaning you've lived in a corporate environment. If you're an entrepreneur, if you started the business or took it over from your father and grandfather, and you're not used to reporting to everyone, this is going to drive you crazy. This isn't going to work. So you're going to be railing against the bureaucracy and the systems, and it's going to be tough for you. If you've had corporate experience and you can live in that kind of environment, if you care about your community and your employees, so you want to go with the business and ensure that the baby's taken care of under this new ownership. That's important. And the third one is the earnout. In other words, if you have an economic interest, or your management team or whatnot have an earnout or potential success as the business goes forward, that's a critical one. So if you look at this, what this really says is cares about your employees and community. Well, that's your heart, and your pocketbook is the earnout. So one, you have previous corporate experience, and you've got your heart and your pocketbook in it. And that can make it work. And let me give you a couple of examples. Cablet Corporation, that's Harry Schell. Guy was terrific. This was a $40 million business. We bought it from Phelps Dodge. It made high voltage electric power cable. You've probably seen those big wooden reels in the street, right? With the big thick cables. That was the business. It was losing about $1 million. And Harry, God bless him, fabulous team, built it to 300 million, and we sold it to British International Cable Corporation. So the interesting thing about Harry was he fulfilled the criteria. One, he actually he had been in the military. He was a successful executive at Phelps Dodge, so he had the corporate experience, right? And he loved his people. You talk about care about your employees. He loved them, and in fact, I was kind of young at the time, and I was learning a lot. And I remember at Christmas one year, at the time we started with one plant. We ended up with 7, but at the time we had about 4 or 5 plants. And Harry was telling me, getting on a plane, I'm going to go shake the hand of every employee. He actually used to put a red sweater on and walk through the plant. And I was thinking, as a young guy, I was kind of like a greedy little capitalist guy because I didn't know anything. I was like, wow, how does he have time to do that? And I asked him, he said, you know what? These are the people that make it work. I want to show respect. I want to shake their hand, and I want to thank them for what they're doing. And I never forgot that lesson. I mean, it was fabulous. So he cared about his people. And the third criteria, we had an earnout. So there was a $40 million on the table, depending upon how the business did. Harry went forward. He ran the business. He ran it in the British International Cable Corporation's environment. Worked like a charm. Absolutely fabulous. Worked out for everybody. Another example is John Mahoney at Translogic. Translogic was a really neat company. It's about 25 million in revenue. It made pneumatic tubes, which you probably think of as really stupid. Those little tubes you probably saw in department stores where they put the money in and it goes. That's really kind of not what it was. They would have these, for example, in hospitals, if you have, three hospital buildings and you want to get a blood sample from building 1 to building, building 1, the 3rd floor, to building 5, the 10th floor. Well, you can put all those medications and blood samples and bandages and all this kind of stuff. You can do it immediately without chewing up nurses' time or administrative time. So it was really a terrific business. Anyway, John had been with the corporate. This was underneath the corporate umbrella. We bought it, 25 million in revenue, and then we sold it to Thyssen, a German company. So now, again, a corporate buyer. So what are the 3 criteria? Again, John had worked he was an engineer, talented guy, had worked in a corporate environment. He understood those environments. It worked for him. Second thing is, cared about his people, loved the community, wanted to see this work. Third thing is, we had an earnout. There was like $7 to $10 million available depending upon how the business performed over the next 2 years. He stayed, we made the earnout, worked like a charm. Let me give you one other example. Well, does everybody know who this is? I don't know. Some of you, do you know who that is, Andrew?
Is that Lombardi?
Yeah, Vince Lombardi. Good one. Yeah, so some of the younger folks may not even know who Lombardi. Anyway, I put him in because those 2 transactions were winners, right? And Lombardi was a winner. Let me give you another one. This one didn't work out so well. This wasn't a Vince Lombardi one, okay? So capital returns, nice business, it was about 12 million in revenue, and they took outdated pharmaceutical drugs and put them back through the chain. So you can't just take Quaaludes and dump them down the toilet, or they go into the black market, right? There's a very tight system of how you have to regulate that. And then they get put on a truck with a lot of security, and they get incinerated, and it's a whole procedure. In this case, we had a young exec that we promoted internally, Rob. He was Rob Ryan. The guy was terrific, absolutely terrific. I was so lucky to find him within the organization, but he was smart. He was young and entrepreneurial. He had never worked in a corporate environment. We sold it to Genstar, which is a logistics company. There was no earnout. There was no employment contract. I mean, flip to the next slide. This is what happened. I mean, there were none of our managers there, I think within like 6 months. I mean, Rob left after 3 weeks or something. I mean, it just, it was a corporate buyer. They didn't feel like they needed the team. They consolidated it within their existing operations. There was no earnout, and so it didn't work. So again, this is a cautionary tale. Try to think about those 3 criteria if you're going to sell to a corporate guy. So let's move on to the private equity guys. I like that Nate's our social media guy. You see the little fireplace. He has a shark picture in there, which I thought was pretty clever. So let's switch to the next one. So private equity, you're going to sell to a private equity guy. Again, it can work. And I have my biases against private equity, but I'm trying to say it can work. 3 criteria. If your company is going to be a standalone, meaning it's not going to be part of another portfolio company of the private equity firm, meaning it's going to be consolidated in, okay? So you got to be standalone. You're going to be the CEO, and they need you. They absolutely need you. And you're key to the business. And the third one is you have equity participation, a potential buyout down the road, and you got a management contract. If you get those 3 things, it can work. And let's talk about some examples. So Central Security was an alarm services company. This is Mark Wilson, terrific guy. I loved Mark. He took this thing from like 200,000 in revenue to 20 million. At 20 million, we were making 10 million in operating profit. Because in the alarm services business, the monitoring has an 85% gross profit margin. I mean, it's a great business. So Mark was fabulous. He had done this before. the buyer of this was a private equity buyer, Great Hill. They absolutely needed him. It was not going to be part of an existing portfolio company. He had a terrific equity opportunity. He got 2 bites of the apple because he had equity with our transaction. And I can't remember, I think he made maybe 5-7 million. And then he got another bite of the apple with the private equity guys. So they needed him. He had an equity participation, and it was not part of an existing portfolio company. So this is a home run. I mean, it worked for Mark, it worked for the employees, it worked for the private equity buyer. Okay, this one didn't quite work so well. Okay, and it didn't work because it violated the 3 rules. This was YoFarm yogurt. Great business. We bought it. It was 9 million in revenues. Really high quality. Had that thick European yogurt, and we had these little toppings on it. I don't know if you've ever seen those. We'd have granola, crunch, and you pop the top off and you mix it in with the yogurt. And Griff Dixie ran this, and Griff was a real pro. We loved Griff. Basically, grew it to 60 million and sold it to Catterton, which is a private equity firm. So let's go through the criteria. Is it going to be part of a consolidation in a portfolio company? Yes, it was. Uh-oh. Oops. Because the minute you hear that, that means I don't need your CEO. I don't need your CFO. I'm going to consolidate. I'm going to cut costs. And there we are. I mean, forget the words they say. That's the reality. And in fact, that's why they can sometimes pay you a high price, because they have synergies. Well, when they have synergies and they pull those synergies out, that's fine if you want the highest price. But be aware that there's going to be some smushing going on with your people. And as we always say, you may not be able to be in the same church with your employees after some of these deals are done. Second thing is, this was frustrating because they downgraded the quality dramatically. And so this, again, it was a taste, it was mouthfeel, it was high quality ingredients. And because they wanted to ramp the revenue, so they cut the price, they cut the cost of the ingredients and ramped it up. And the third thing is, Griff Dixie didn't have any equity participation. So it violated the rules. Yeah, see, this is YoCrunch. So they changed it from YoFarm to YoCrunch. But this is their product. I don't know if you can tell, but the ingredients were awful. I mean, it upset me. I mean, I would go into a grocery store and I'd buy YoCrunch and I'd spit it out. I was like, what did these guys do? I mean, it was really bad. So it didn't work. Griff was gone. The quality was gone, and it got smushed inside of a private equity portfolio company. And so the next slide says it all. Yeah, it didn't work. It hit an iceberg, went down. It didn't work for the existing management or partners, and it didn't work for the community, and it didn't work for the employees. It may have worked economically for the private equity firm, but big parts of that constituency, it didn't work. So basically, I just want you to understand, again, I'm biased. So the private equity model is pretty simple. You can get a good price if they're going to consolidate it, but you have to understand they're going to be tough on documentation. They're going to strip mine the company, particularly if they're going to put it within an existing portfolio company. You're going to jam in 3 or 4 add-on acquisitions to show growth. They're going to max out fees and dividends that pull their equity out. They're going to leverage the heck out of it as much as they can. I mean, today, some of these crazy companies are being leveraged 5 to 7 times operating profit, if you can imagine that. And then they're going to sell it. They're going to sell it to the highest bidder 3 to 5 years out. Could be Attila the Hun, doesn't matter, because they've got to generate big returns. And the economics of the whole thing is money under management. I get a 2% management fee on committed capital, and I get 20% of the gains. And if I don't deliver returns of 20 to 25% for my limited partners, I'm not going to be able to get my next fund done, and I'm not going to be the big guy. So
Ted, what if the private equity company comes to us and touts their focus on people, maybe process, industry, probably stopping short of community. But what if they seem to be have a genuine care for people in place?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Andrew. I'm going to answer it this way. It's talk. Okay. You have to ask the critical questions. Don't listen to what they say. Ask the 3 questions that we put in. Is this going to be a standalone entity? Or is it going to be consolidated into one of your portfolio companies? That's question. Question number 2 is, do you honestly need me as a CEO? Don't rub salve on my head and try to tell me you need me. If it's going to be standalone, you're probably going to need me. If I'm a consolidated, I don't care what you say, I'm out. And the third thing is, talk to me about my contract for my people and myself, and what's my equity participation. Those are the only 3 things that count. The rest of it is just, talk. Talk is cheap. You got to hit the 3 criteria to really make that work. So again, and this is, and I'm not trying to be moralistic here. This is your business. You decide what you want. We're just saying there's trade-offs. If you want the highest price, you probably got to go to a corporate guy or a private equity guy that's consolidating in a platform, because again, they got synergies. So they can pay you a higher price because they're going to cut all those costs out. If you want to protect your family's legacy, your employees, and your community, then you've got a different equation. And you may want to think about how you sell it and to whom you sell it to. And and I've just got this, a little rant and rave at the end here. These are our 2, we say, look, our model it's about seasoned operating executives. It's not about 25-year-old, MBAs that think they know stuff. And I love this picture of Troy Roberts and Bill Smith, our founding partners, and Troy's our CEO. And these guys have built businesses or run businesses. They are terrific, solid operators, and they're good people, and they care about the people in the organizations. They want to see them grow and develop. And so it's all about operating managers. It's not about financial engineers. It's about a conservative capital structure, not leveraging the heck out of these things. It's about relationship investing. It's not about winning auctions. And it's about keeping the business in their communities. That's what we want to do. We don't want to shut them. We don't want to consolidate. We don't want to send it over to China. It's about protecting family legacies. That's critical for us. And for some of you folks, it's critical for you. But it's your decision. If that's important to you, you'll make one decision. If you need the highest price, that's another decision. It's not about strip mining these businesses. We want to upside the company and the employees. We don't want to downside operations. We want to make operating improvements, not do financial engineering. And we never want to resell the business rather than, grooming it and flipping it in, 3 to 4 years.
And that is a wrap on Succession Planning Survival Guide.